Welcome to my year in books for 2025. I read 31 books this year, and according to Goodreads, 9,646 pages. So a lot more than last year. Last year I think I read 25 books. I was 4 books short, but considering how many months I did not read, I only read 7 months out of the year, so that's about 5-ish books a month. I think I read most of them at the end of the year. My shortest book was 40 pages, so it was a novella, which was Drop, Cover, and Hold On by Jasmine Guillory, I believe. If I butcher any of the author's names, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce them. My longest book was The House of Hades by Rick Riordan, which is 597 pages. My average book length in 2025 was about 311 pages, so like your typical chapter book, I guess. My most shelved was Where the Crawdads Sing, and my least shelved was another novella called Royal Valentine by Soraya Wilson. My average rating for 2025 was 3.7, so pretty good. I read some pretty good books this year, and I'm excited to share them with you. The first book that I read was The House of Hades, actually, so I read my longest book first. So this is in the, Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. So it follows the original Percy Jackson series with some of the same characters, some new ones, a new villain, or I guess conflict. And I can't remember much from this book. I remember there was some good Percabeth, but it's not very memorable. This series, some of it's memorable, a lot of it all just meshes together, and I feel like the Percy Jackson series is like that for me. Like, I can't really remember which things are from specific books a lot of the time, and then it all just kind of falls into the same one long book that's like 1,000 pages. I rated this 5 stars though. I rated this 5 stars. I do believe I enjoyed this. I read it in like 4 days. No review for it. Also in January, I read The Blood of Olympus. So I finished off the series to start my year, and I gave this one 4 stars. This kind of fell flat for me because it was, obviously I was looking forward to it. It was the end of a series. At this point I've finished 10 books in the Percy Jackson universe, so I'm very connected to the characters, and I was just kind of underwhelmed. That's what my review was. I think I just said I was a little underwhelmed, not gonna lie. I still loved it, and I still continue to read Rick Riordan's books because he has so many. The next book that I read, the last book in January, was The Trials of Apollo. I'm pretty sure this is The Hidden Oracle. So this follows Apollo after the Heroes of Olympus series, so this picks up right after the end of that book. So I'm basically just staying in the same path. And I rated this a 4 stars. My review, let's see. I did think this was a very good start to a series, and it obviously has to introduce some new characters, flesh out some characters that you've already met but don't know much about. And I really enjoy Apollo as a narrator. He's kind of very like Gen Z in a way. I don't know. He's just funny, and it's funny to read his dialogue and like his inner dialogue, and it's just, he just calls things how they are. He's a very self-centered narrator, but it's in a funny way where it's like, of course this is a god of Olympus, of course he's going to be talking about very highly about himself, but a lot of times he's humbled, so that's very refreshing to see. Honestly, like, I can't, like, half the time I'm like, Do I love him? Do I hate him? I don't know. End of January into February, I started this on my Kindle. I do not know how to pronounce this. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Marianne Schaefer and Annie Barrows. So they write letters back and forth, and then eventually they meet, and you get to see what happens then, and it details the tale of the island of Guernsey during the German occupation and how they survived that during World War II. And I just love a good historical fiction with a subplot of romance. And this book really did it for me. I mean, it's pretty short, so I read it relatively fast. And I just really loved it. It was a 4-star book for me. Actually, 3.75 because it was a little bland. But it's hard sometimes to make historical fiction books entertaining, so. Next, I read my first book by Catherine Senner, which was The Bodyguard, and let me tell you, I love Catherine Senner. Catherine Senner actually liked one of my reviews on Goodreads, and it's a book that I'm going to share with you later, so I was so excited about that. Like, I love her as an author. All of her books are just, I don't know, very fun concepts. Like, this book is about someone who's a girl who's hired to be a bodyguard for a very famous actor, and there is a fake dating plot, and obviously that you can really never go wrong with that. It's always a great one, and it was just fun. It was very fast-paced. I gave it a 4.5 stars, and I think it was a little bit out of my comfort zone. The ending, it was just like a little like unexpected, and maybe that's because I haven't read Catherine Senner, and I feel like that, but out of all the books that I've read, this one's just kind of a little crazy. I would recommend this. I love this book. So going from February, that's the only book I read in February. I entered softball season, and then I did not have time to read. And when I did have time, I was just too tired to focus on anything. So I didn't read until vacation at the end of May. So I read 2 books on vacation. So I read The Sunrise on the Reaping, which I read on the way there. And of course, like, by Suzanne Collins, I love the Hunger Games world. Like, that's one of my, I think that's my favorite dystopian world. And I can just never go wrong with anything in that realm. Like, she could keep coming out with novels for different characters, and I would eat it up every time. I just love her writing, and I love this world so much. But this one is a tearjerker. Like, it'll get you, and it's just very sad at some parts, but I think that's, what makes it so great. I did rate this 4 stars though, and I think it's because it was just kind of difficult to read. I don't know if it just felt slow at some parts, like the pacing was off, but I'm just not sure what fell flat for me. But maybe it's because I was just so tired and I read this in the car. Maybe if I read it now with a new mindset, maybe I would like it more. And then while I was on vacation, I read Funny Story by Emily Henry, and I think I probably read this one on the beach a bit, and then I read it at the condo, and I just had a more enjoyable experience reading this. Her engagement ends with her fiance, and then the girl that her fiance left her for has an ex-boyfriend, so she needs a place to live, so she ends up moving in with that ex-boyfriend. And so it's kind of like they switch partners in a way. Daphne and Miles, the ex-boyfriend, are not together. It's just a plot out of convenience because she needs a place to live. They both just got dumped, and it's kind of just the best situation they can make out of a crappy one. And you kind of see how they begin to interact with each other. They've never really talked before this, but now they kind of have that mutual, like, oh, my partner just left me for your partner, and you see how they bond over that and learn to connect with each other. And I rated that a 5 stars because if Emily Henry just constantly gives 5 star after 5 star, and I love her. So on vacation, I started Betting on You, which I didn't end up finishing until October. Yes, 5 months. And then I soft DNF'd this because I was going through a rough time and I could not read romance because every time I read romance, I wanted to bawl my eyes out. And I got into such a reading slump and I didn't want to read. So then the next time that I read was in September. So I didn't read for about 3 months. I didn't read the whole summer, which is the best time to read. Obviously, I have so much more free time and so much more like traveling. I'm going to places, I have time to read in the car, but I was just not into it. I was in my journaling era, just journaling all my feelings, and the escapism wasn't working because it would just make me so sad. But then I eventually found my love for reading again, and that is thanks to Frida McFadden, because I ate this book up in one night. I started reading it at like midnight, and then like I just stayed up reading it. It was so good. This is my favorite book of hers that I've read so far, Never Lie. I rated this 5 stars, and I think about this book to this day. I remember like small details about like small subplots that you didn't think really mattered until eventually they got brought up again, and you're like, oh my goodness, like I never saw that coming. And Frida McFadden does this every single time with her writing, where you can just never expect what's going to happen. So this is about newlyweds, Trisha and Ethan, who are searching for a new home, and then they visit this remote place, and it's one that they're going to consider buying maybe, and it used to belong to Dr. Adrian Hale, a renowned psychiatrist who vanished without a trace years ago. And they find out that all of her stuff is still there, and there's a collection of audio transcripts from her patients. So that eventually just becomes a whole thing, and the truth is unraveled. I can't, it's so good. And then after I read Never Lie, I was in a thriller mood, and I was like, this is so good, I have to keep going. And then the next night, I started another book by her, and I looked in my Kindle library. I looked what I had downloaded, and then I saw that I had The Housemaid's Secret, and I didn't realize that that was the second book to The Housemaid, so I was like, oh, like, let me get The Housemaid, which I had already read 20% of The Housemaid's Secret like months before, and I didn't even realize it. And then I just like never picked it back up again for I have no idea why. I think it's because I was getting confused with some parts that are because I didn't read the first book. But then it all made sense, and luckily I forgot a lot about the first part of this, so it didn't spoil anything for me. But The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, I rated this a 4 stars. This is about a girl named Millie who is looking for a job, and she ends up getting a job at the Winchester's house as a live-in housemaid. And then you get to see how their lives intertwine, and some things happen that just can't be explained, and then all of a sudden things come to a close, and you figure out why things were so weird. And it's not in a way that you'd expect, because of course it's Frida McFadden. The next was The Housemaid's Secret, the second in the series. I rated this a 4 stars as well. I thought it was a really great sequel. This is about the Garricks, and I don't remember his name. Douglas Garrick and Wendy Garrick, and Millie again is a housemaid. This time she's not living there, but still some weird things happen, and she's like, this is kind of weird. And of course she does her investigating, and things are not as they seem, and you find out in a really cool way. In October, I had finished volleyball season, and I was like, okay, I need to do it. I need to finally finish this book. So I picked back up Betting on You. And at the time, I probably had 3/4 finished. I really had not much left to read, but I was just like I couldn't do it to myself yet. But after 5 months, I was able to make myself read romance again, and I read Betting on You, and I love this book so much. It's a 4.5 stars. It's Lynn Painter is my favorite ever, especially because her young adult, no spice. Like, it's more of just fluff. And if it's spice, it's really it's PG-13. And I love that. I love that. I love that. About Charlie and Bailey, high school students who have a chance encounter at the airport one time and then end up meeting again years later. And then years after that, meet again. Based on When Harry Met Sally. And I love that movie. It's a classic. And it's just a great sort of enemies to friends to lovers, and that is two of my favorite tropes. A little like enemies to lovers, friends to lovers. It's a blend, and I love that so much. It gives all the banter, all the tension, and I love that so much. Then I read The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. This is the ending to the trilogy of the Housemaid series. And this one just fell flat for me. I feel like this really didn't need to be a book. I think it's great that we find out more of what happens to Millie and like how she's trying to lead a normal life after everything that's happened to her. But it just doesn't feel like we really needed this book. And some things just made me really mad. Like, I was getting genuinely so mad. If you saw my reading blog when I was reading this was upsetting me so bad. Because I thought that there was about to be a trope in here that was going to make me DNF the book. But I ended up, there wasn't that plot, so it was good. But it was still 3.5 stars. Next, I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and I had high hopes for this one because everyone said that this was so sad, and at the time I picked this up because I was like, I need a good cry. Like, I am sad, and I'm just going to live in that sadness and cry. But then I started reading this, and I was like, I don't get why everyone's so sad. And then I got to the end, and I was like, oh, like, I can see how people are getting sad. But then I didn't cry. And obviously, I'm a crier when it comes to books. Like, you've seen me cry. And I didn't do that with this one. I think the problem was I felt so detached from the characters, so that I just didn't really care when anything happened. And it's not that the characters weren't, like, fleshed out enough. I just feel like I didn't relate enough to them to really care for them, if that makes sense. I would also say that I just didn't think the characters were very likable, and I think they were so unlikable to the point where it was like why am I rooting for them? Like, they had their good parts, but then they were just like annoying. So I rated that a 3 stars. And then I read Where the Crawdads Sing by Delilah Owens. And this book was so good. And I rated it a 4 stars, and I so badly wanted to rate it a 5 stars. From the beginning of this book, I was like, I don't see how I'm going to be really interested in this. Like, we're literally just talking about this little girl. I don't see how it can be very interesting. But I loved reading about, what's her name, Kaya, when she was little and like surviving and on the marsh. I just love that. That was my favorite part of the book. Like, I was like, I don't even really care if she grows up at this point because I love just reading about her day-to-day life. I thought it was so interesting. And then we get to when she grows up and everything was building up, but then the ending just kind of falls flat. I feel like everything gets wrapped up so quickly, and like we had fleshed out the story and had all this build up, and then everything's just kind of like done in like, it feels like 5 pages, and I was just kind of like, oh. And that was just really disappointing for me, but I really love this book, and I would recommend it still. Then I read The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This book made me cry so hard. I wouldn't even say heartbroken. This isn't even a very sad book. This isn't like, it's objectively sad, but it's like, let me read you my review. Objectively, this book is a little juvenile and the writing is very straightforward. Not very flowery or special, it's very like straight to the point, but I bawled my eyes out like a baby. And also, during this, I was sick and almost killed a dog that ran in front of my car. So that probably just like made me very high strung, and just also like maybe that's why I cried so much. But I usually don't get this type of strong reaction from books, so just that alone like evokes 5 stars from me. This takes place in one day. I got so attached to these characters. The Song of Achilles takes place over years and years and years, and I still didn't get attached to the characters. One day, and I was rooting for both of these people, and I wanted so badly for them to get everything that they wanted in life. And maybe that was because in some, like, I could relate to them in so many ways, even though I really had nothing from an outside perspective in common with them. But like emotionally, internally, like I was going through some of the same struggles. So that's why that was a 5-star book for me. And then I picked back up the Trials of Apollo series and read The Dark Prophecy, and it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. The characters in this series, like I just don't like them very much except for Apollo. Oh, this is happening to them, but like I don't really care. Like I know they're fake. They don't feel real to me. Then I read The Burning Maze, and then this one was a little bit better. This was 3.5 stars. And just the one complaint that I have is I miss Persebeth. Like, bring them back for a cameo or something. Like, I love them so much. I'll finish the series, but it's not gonna be my favorite series out of all Rick Riordan series for sure. Even though like I love Apollo and I wish the best for him, and he's having his character development, but it's just not hitting the spot for me. Ooh. And then I came to a point where I was like, I need some romance, but I need some quick romance. Like, I have so many of these books on my bookshelf, but I do not want to pick them up right now because I can't commit to that. Because it was later at night and I was like, I want something that I could finish right now. So then I came to the realization that I can read a short story, like those exist. So I looked them up, and then I found out that there was this Meet Cute series, and they were all on Kindle Unlimited, and it was by a bunch of authors that are very popular in the romance genre, and there was a few familiar faces, so I was like, shoot, like let me just read those because they're free on Kindle Unlimited. And the first in that was The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren. I thought this one was cute. I gave it 3 stars. None of these short stories can really be like a 4 or 5 stars for me, I feel like, because there's not enough time to really get that connection. But maybe one day I'll read a short story where I love it so much that it gets a 5 stars. But at this time, I don't feel like that's possible. One of the things that I didn't like about this were some of the higher than PG-13 but not exactly rated R topics that it brought up, and I was just kind of like, that's a little weird. Like, I feel like we're not to that, like, that personal level. Like, maybe that's like a 100 pages in, like maybe you'll drop some of that, but this was like 100 pages long, so I feel like there's really no need to bring that up. But that's just Christina Lauren. That's how she writes, and I know that. But I thought it was a cute idea. And then I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I've never picked up an Abby Jimenez book until this year. I love Abby Jimenez. She's a wonder. She's a wonder, she really is. This book was 5 stars. I cannot express to you how much I love love, 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 love this book. This book follows Emma, who is cursed, and every guy she dates finds his true love after they break up. And it turns out that she's not the only one with this curse. She finds this man named Justin on Reddit about being a love's good luck charm. And she ends up messaging him saying, like, I have the same problem. And they've come up with the plan that if they date each other, then both of their curses will break, and then they'll both find the loves of their lives after they break up. And this is just, like, it seems like such a silly concept, but the topics in this, she always does a great job, because I've read 3 of her books now, which you'll see later. She always does a great job of weaving in these subplots of, or they're actually pretty big plots, I would say, of just hard to talk about topics, like not necessarily grief, but loss in more than ways of just death, like people leaving, abandoning, neglect, just all of these things that are so important to be talked about because they're so horrible to go through, and you feel like you're alone when no one ever talks about them. But she talks about them in a way that makes you feel seen, and I love it so much. I cried so much at the end of this book. And one thing that I didn't know about this when I picked it up is that it was one of the books that was part of a trilogy. Abby Jimenez does a thing where she'll have books that are part of the same world, but you don't need to read them in order to understand them. This could be a standalone book, but there are characters mentioned from the other books, so it's fun to read them in order. But I will say, I would recommend them in the order that I read them. I read this first, and then Part of Your World, the first one, and then the second one, Yours Truly, because I feel like it's a big, like, then you get more of a plot twist in this book if you do that way. And then because you don't know things about other characters that are revealed. And I personally, and then I'll read this again. You should read it 3, 1, 2, 3. So you read this and then read the entire series in order. And then, so you can still understand how they connect, like, after, but then you don't spoil yourself. But this was my favorite book in the whole series. 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott. And then there's also Miki Daughtry and Tobias Laconis. And this is obviously a very popular movie, and I watched the movie before, just like I did with The Fault in Our Stars. I just grouped those together because they're both about illness, and then a lot of it focuses around meeting someone with the same illness. This is about Stella and Will, who are both patients with cystic fibrosis, and if you come into close contact with other people with CF, then that's very dangerous because you can spread each other's, like, illness. It's different. You can interact with people that don't have the disease and be fine, but then something about it, like, you can't interact with people, like, in close contact because it will just not be good and it'll kill you. So they have this rule of staying 6 feet apart, and it just goes from there. It's a love story, it's a romance, but it's also kind of a tragedy in a way, and it made me cry. And then I read more of the Improbable Meet Cute short stories. Read these for like a few nights. This is when we start to get into the last month of the year, December, and I was really behind on my reading goal, so I was like, I need to read more. So then I read Rosie and the Dreamboat, and that was a 3 stars. Like, I thought it was a good short story. Like, it really was an improbable meet cute. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. But I enjoyed the banter between the characters, and it was just cute. And then I read Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez. And, I read these out of order. I read, like, it doesn't really matter if you read them in order, but I read, like, it 1, 3, 2, 4, 6, 5. But that's okay. So Worst Wingman Ever, I rated it a 3 stars, and it was cute, and it was a quick read, so exactly what I needed at the moment. And then I read Drop Cover and Hold On. It was 1 star. It was just, this book was just so incredibly disappointing and bad, just flat out bad. Like, you can do a short story well, like you can pace it well, build up well, create chemistry between characters. This didn't do any of that. The dialogue was weird, they said weird things. The relationship just came on so fast, and it felt like it was dropped on me like an anvil, and it was just too much. Yeah, I couldn't. And then I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, and I liked this book. I loved it, really. But it was only 4 stars for me because it was a lot spicier than I initially thought it would be. But it was still so cute, and it reminded me of a cute little Hallmark movie because of the small town that this is based in. And then I read Hello Stranger by Catherine Center, and I love this book. This is the review that Catherine Center liked on my Goodreads, and I was like, this can't be the real Catherine Center, and it was. And I was just like about to cry. I was so excited. And I gave this 5 stars, and this is the review that Catherine Center liked. I said, I loved this book. The concept was so unique and interesting to read about. I guessed the ending because to me it was pretty obvious, but it was still good. I liked how everything wasn't always picture perfect in this book, with her family dynamics and work. It was relatable in that aspect. I would highly recommend. So one of my shorter reviews, but I guess she liked it because I was honest, but still give it 5 stars. So, oh, and I did read that in 1 day. So if that tells you, I really liked it. And then I read The Housemaid's Wedding, which is a novella, and it comes after The Housemaid's Secret and is before The Housemaid is Watching. So it is Millie's wedding, obviously. And so it's considered number 2.5 in the series, and I gave it a 3 stars. It was alright, like, I enjoyed it, but then the ending just very abrupt. So, like, it did not wrap up well. I didn't think so. And then I read The Royal Valentine, which was the last in the Improbable Meet Cute series because I read them out of order. I wanted to DNF this book so badly. It was so insanely just bad. It was also just very insta love, and in the reading community you would know that we do not like insta love tropes. If you do, then no, I hate insta love. That doesn't happen in real life. Maybe it's a little love at first sight, but do you immediately just start dating? If you do, you're probably gonna break up. Like, I'm sorry. And it was just the main love interest, the male main character, is Scottish. Soraya Wilson writes out all of his Scottish slang. And it was just like, and this is a spoiler. Actually, don't read this book, so I'm going to spoil it for you. There's a 3rd act breakup. This book is only like 40 pages. How do they get together and break up within 40 pages? I don't know, and it should never have happened. It was too cheesy, and it felt like it was like a fan fiction written by a teenager, like, actually, no, like a tween. And I just couldn't. That was so bad. And then I read my final book in the Improbable Meet Cute series, and it was With Any Luck by Ashley Poston, the same author who wrote The 7-Year Slip, and I loved that book so much. She always kind of has a bit of magical realism in her books, and it's just some sort of unexplainable magical piece that's happening, and I love it so much. And I read this in like 30 minutes. It was pretty short, but I liked it. It was a little spicy, but like, I just kept reading because I was like, I don't know how all these problems can be solved, and then they were solved. So then I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, and I had really high hopes for this book. It just fell really flat for me. Like, I had really high hopes for this book because this is one of Haley Pham's like 6-star reads, so it's like off the scale. but I only gave it 4 stars. Like, I still thought it was good, but it's just kind of weird. It's just kind of weird, like some bits of magical realism, but that you don't expect that in this type of book. And I didn't expect it until it was happening. Like, I didn't have any idea that this book was like this. It's about Casey Fletcher, a recently widowed actress, trying to escape paparazzi and everything that's going on because they're out together, you know? They're taking pictures of her in her deepest, darkest moments. But so she goes out on the lake, and then she ends up watching the house across the lake, and some weird things are going on over there. And so you see what happens. Abby Jimenez, yours truly. I loved this book. This was a 5 stars. And both of the characters, it's Brianna Ortiz, and Jacob Maddox. And I just love Jacob is so sweet. I love him. He's a little anxious guy, and I love that about him. I filmed the rest of this video a while ago, but I had problems with the footage, and I never ended up getting to the last book. But anyways, this book solidified that I love Abby Jimenez and I love her writing, and I will continue to read the rest of her books. Lastly, I read Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. And I love Ali Hazelwood. She is pretty up there with Spice. But if you take away that part, the banter, the chemistry between characters is just insane. And this one did not disappoint. And I loved just the STEM romances. I think that's because, you know, I've always been someone who's interested in STEM and like a woman in STEM. And I don't know, I just like seeing that representation in books. And I feel like there's always this added plot of the woman being underestimated because of, you know, the field she's in, and it's a male dominated field. And I just love proving them wrong. So that was all of the books I read in 2025. I hope to read more this year. My goal is about 40 books. So we will see if I actually get that accomplished. I am currently really busy with basketball, so I have not read much, but I will come out with another video soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.